Hello all. So today we are going to complete our Git or GitHub crash course in an hour. So talking about the expectation, this is how it looks like. And we will be talking about difference between Git and GitHub. We'll be talking about different object types. And of course, we will be doing all this in the practical demonstration. We'll be looking at the Git workflow. We'll be doing most common Git operations. We will be setting author name and email. We'll be looking at all the most commonly Git commands as well. We'll talk about the different file statuses as well. We'll be looking at branches and merging as well. So this is what you can see in the diagram we are going to do in the practical demonstration. So we are going to create some of the branches and we are going to merge the feature one branch into the main branch. We'll be committing some of the files there. And then we will be talking about the remote repository at GitHub. We will be pushing changes to the GitHub repository level, and we will also be pulling changes from the GitHub repository level. This is just an architecture diagram that myself and my colleague is working at the local system, and both are trying to push changes to the one of the repositories residing at the GitHub level. So more on to the practical demonstration in the next video. So stay tuned. Hello all. So we are looking at getting started with Git. So we are going to install a Git. We are also going to initialize a new Git repository. We are going to discuss about different Git object types. So stay tuned. So moving on to my terminal. So just let me clear my screen. So I'm using AWS EC2 instance and Ubuntu AMI image. So if I try to type Git version, so Git is already installed by default. If you do not have Git installed already, you can make a use of package manager. You can say update. So it will work. It will try to take a second. So probably the command has already been executed. So what you can do now is sudo apt install git. But I will not be executing this command because I already have got a git installed in my machine. Okay. So let me clear my screen. So now what I'm going to do here is if I try to do ls, you can see these are the directories which are there. So what I can do is let's try to create a directory. I will say mkdir. I will say git repo, and I will just navigate to my directory. Okay, so that is there. So now you can see that my current working directory is nothing but git repo. So this will be our current working directory. So now what I'm going to do next is I will say git init. So before I do that, I just wanted to show you ls. So you can see that nothing has really come. So this particular directory is empty as of now. So when I try to initialize this particular directory, it might take a second. And if I say ls, I will not be able to see anything. If I say ls minus a, because I also want to list all the hidden files as well. So now you can see that I have got git directory, and under that all the objects will be getting stored, right? So moving back to my presentation, so we'll be talking about a difference between Git and GitHub as well. So currently I'm using Git, which is nothing but a distributed version control system. So which will be used to track all the changes in the files in my working directory, and whatever the changes I will make, Git will track all those particular changes as well. So I'm not going to use a GitHub repository as of now. So I'm doing changes on my local system, and Git will track all those particular changes in the working directory as well. Okay. So Git object types. So there are certain object types within Git. So you can see a blob is corresponding to the files which I'm going to store in my working directory, and tree is corresponding to your folders or directories you can understand at this point in time. And there is also commit. So commit are nothing but these are the pointers to the trees. So for the time being, I think this understanding is okay. So just for FYI, so for every object which I was talking about, which are existing in the Git, so for every object type, there is an hash associated with that particular object. Okay. So moving on. Hello all, in this section of the video, we are going to talk about how to add changes to the staging area. We are going to talk about the Git workflow, and in our case, I will be talking about what is our working directory and how we can move files from a working directory to the staging area and staging area to the Git repository. So just stay tuned. Let me move back to the terminal for a time being. What I'm going to do here is this is not needed. Yeah, so what I'm going to do here is, so in the last video, I show you how we can initialize a Git repository. So let's do that once again. So can you see we have already gotten a message that this particular repository is initialized. Now you can also see that there is one more hint which says a git branch minus m name, right? So since we are going to use a remote repository at the GitHub, which is nothing but the GitHub, so it is recommended that we are making changes like this. Git excuse me, and I would say main. So now you can see that the pointer has already been changed to the main directory. So since my terminal already indicates that it is a main directory, let me clear my screen, but you can also try to check the status by using this particular command. So now you can see that we are on branch main and no commits yet as of now. What I'm going to do next is let's try to create one particular file. I will say echo, I will say first, and I will redirect the output to let's name the file as 1.txt. Okay. So if I say ls, now you can see that this particular file is already existing. If I again try to get the status, so now you can see that this particular file which we have created is nothing but this is an untracked file. Whatever the change I will be making to this particular file, for example, the adding the content or appending the content, or for example renaming that particular file, so all these particular changes will be untracked, right? So git will not be tracking those changes. So just remember for the time being now that this is an untracked file. Okay, so what I'm going to do next here is, so at this point in time, you can also see that my working directory is nothing but the Git repo. So this is my working directory. So if I move on to my presentation slide, so Git repo, the directory which I have created is nothing but my working directory. Okay. So now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move whatever the objects or whatever the so 1.txt is the file which is residing in the working directory. So this particular file will be moving to the staging area. So how we will do that, I'm trying to show you in a bit. So we'll be using a command which we call it as git add dot. So when I say dot, all the changes which I made to this particular working directory will be moving to the staging area. So we'll be making the use of this particular command. And in the subsequent section, we will also be moving the file from a staging area to the Git repository. Okay. What I'm going to do next here is, so let me clear my screen. I'm going to do the git status once again. Now you can see that this particular file which we have just added 1.txt is nothing but it is an untracked file. So if I say git add dot, so again if I try to clear my screen and if I say git status, so now you can see that changes to be committed. So there are certain changes. So you can see that no commits now, but now it says changes to be committed, right? So this particular file is now residing in the staging area at this point in time. So I will not be making a commit now. Just stay tuned in the next video. I am going to configure my username. So stay tuned. So in this section, we are going to talk about how we can commit changes to the Git repository. So, but before that, I would just would like to mention some of the things. So we have already made a use of this particular command git add, and therefore our file which we have created here 1.txt that has already been moved from a working directory to the staging area, but we have not yet committed that particular file to the Git repository, right? We'll be making the use of git commit as a command to move that particular file to the Git repository. But before doing that, we are going to take care of certain logistics. So just stay tuned. What we are going to do is we are going to set an author name and email at this point in time. So let me move back to my terminal without a further ado. What I'm going to do here is I will say git. I will say git. So at this point in time, what I can do first is I will try to list what is there here. So here you can see that we are not able to see the username or user email address at this point in time. So those are the empty values. So we can set our username and user email address at this point in time. So what I'm going to do next is git. So we'll be making the use of this reference. I will say config. I will say global. I will say user. dot name, let's say, and I will again be typing that particular command. I will say global, I will say user email, and the email which we are going to use is cybersecnerd.com. Okay. So this is our email. So just make sure one more thing that the email address which I'm going to use is, this is my email address which I'm going to use at the GitHub level or GitHub repository level as well. Okay. So we have done that. Okay. There is a typo. So let us fix that. Okay, so that is taken care of. If I say config, if I say list once again, so now you can see that we have already set some of the things. So for example, our username is Chirag and our user email address is nothing but cybersecnerd@gmail.com. Okay, so for the time being, this looks good. So moving on to the next video. Hello, also, we have already seen in the last video that we have already made changes. For example, we have basically make a use of git add command. So we have moved a file from a working directory to the staging area. So next step is we are going to commit changes, right? So we are going to make a use of this particular command and we are going to commit changes so that all the changes are synchronized for all the three areas, right? What we are going to do next is we have already used git add as a command. So let's try to commit those changes. And in the previous section, we have already configured our username and user email address, right? So if I move back to my terminal, you have already seen that I have configured my username and user email address. So what I can do now is git commit. And in the codes, I will say first commit. Okay. So just a second. So this is taken care of. So if I go back here, you can see now you can see here the one file change and one insertion done, and you can see that particular file is created, and you can also see, so this is nothing but the hash of the object which has already been added to the git repository, right? So moving on, the next video. Hello, also in this particular section we are going to look at how we can explore history of whatever the commits we have made so far. So this is what we are going to explore here. Explore commit history. Okay. So we have already made a one particular commit. So what I'm going to do next is we are going to create one more file, which is nothing but 2.txt, and which will and we are going to add from working directory to the staging area and then to the git repository, and we will try to see how those particular changes look like, right? So it will go to the this particular changes will go through the entire workflow, I would say. So let's get started. I will be moving on to my terminal. So here, if I say git log here, now you can see that we have basically created, or we have committed the first file, which is nothing but 1.txt, and this is our first commit. At the same time, should also be able to see the SHA hash for this particular file, right? This is the corresponding SHA-1 hash for the object which we have created here in our first commit. Okay. What I'm going to next here is, so you can see this is the present working directory. So let's create one more file. I will say second. I will redirect output to 2.txt. So that is done. If I say ls, now you can see that there are two files which are existing as of now. If I say git status as of now, let's try to check here. So you can see that on branch main, and we can see that there is one particular untracked file which is nothing but 2.txt. Okay. So now what I'm going to do next is git add. So we are going to make changes to the moving changes to the staging area. So if I say git status once again, now you can see that changes are yet to be committed, right? Changes are yet to be committed, and this particular file is no longer untracked. So let's try to make that particular changes once again. We will moving this particular file to the git repository. Okay. So let me clear my screen. So if I say git commit, I will say -m. So we have already made a second commit. And now what we are going to do next is git log. So now you can see that we have already made two commits and we are trying to learn more about that. So what we are seeing here is, so this is the hash corresponding to the first commit which we have made. And here we have just added this particular file to our Git repository, right? So this hash is corresponding to this particular file or the commit which we have made, the first commit. And similarly, now you can see that this is the hash which is corresponding to the second commit which we have made. We try to add one particular file 2.txt to our Git repository. And one more thing which we are able to see, so this is a pointer which is pointing to the main as a directory, and this particular head pointer is at the second commit. So just remember that we are going to talk little more about that, this particular pointer or head which is pointing to the second commit in our main branch as of now. So moving on to the next video. See you there. Hello all. In this section, we are going to talk about the commands which we are going to use or we have already been using in our practical demonstration. So you might have seen that we have used this particular command git status. So it basically shows whether the file has already been in the untracked status or is yet to be committed or has already been committed, things of that nature. So this particular command git add, this particular command adds a file to the staging area. So we have already used a command git add dot. So whatever the changes we have made in the working directory will be moving to the staging area. And this particular command to final commit the changes to the Git repository as it says in the sentence, and then git log. So we in the last video we have seen in by using a git commit command, we have seen that there are two commits which we have made. So first commit and a second commit. So we have also seen the corresponding hash which is associated with the first commit and the second commit and the corresponding status of that. And we are also seeing the pointer is basically heading to which particular branch, right? So we have seen those particular changes in the main branch. And if we really wanted to switch to any other branch, we can basically make a use of checkout as a command as well. If we really wanted to switch to the different branch, for example, we are at the main branch. If we really wanted to switch to the different branch, we can use this particular command as well. Hello all. In this section, we are going to look at how to checking out commits and branches. So for example, now just let me turn on my pointer. So we have already discussed about this commit. So commit is nothing but one of the Git object. Okay. So we have seen this. So now when we say what is commit, commit is one of the pointer to the trees you can say, or in the better words, you can also understand it is a state of repository. State of repository. Okay. It is nothing but the state of the repository. So when we talk about that, our main branch, right? So our main branch has got two commits, right? We have the first commit and we have also got the second commit. So in the first commit, we have added 1.txt as a file, and in the second commit, we have added 2.txt as a file, right? So what happens is this now the first commit has got a corresponding hash associated with that, right? It has got a corresponding hash associated with the first commit, and similarly, the second commit has also got a corresponding hash associated with it. So if I really wanted to move back to the previous state of the repository, can I do that? So let's try to see if I move back to the terminal, okay, what I really mean. So let me try to clear my screen. So first of all, I'm again typing git log. So this is what I was explaining. So you can see that this is a part of the first commit. So this is nothing but the first commit, right? And you can see the corresponding hash associated with this first commit. And similarly for the second commit, you have got this hash associated with it. Okay. So in the first commit, we have got only one file, which is 1.txt. And we have committed a file which is nothing but 2.txt in the second commit, right? So if I really wanted to move back to the previous state of the repository, I should be able to check out to the first commit. So let's try to see how I can check out to the first commit where I only be able to see the file which was committed then and there 1.txt, right? So I am moving back in time. So what I'm going to do next is, so let me try to copy. So this is the hash. So let's try to copy this. Okay, so that is fine. So what I'm going to do next is I will say git checkout. So now you can see that I have got certain message. So let's try to interpret or comprehend that. So it says your head is in the detached state, right? And you can also see that now head is now at the first commit, right? So it is very, very important. So when I was there in the main branch, our head was pointing to the second commit, right? Second commit. But now, since when I checked out, when I from the main branch, when I check out to the first commit, now you can see that my head is basically pointing to my of is pointing to the first commit. Now you can see that it is pointing to the first commit, right? So since I'm already moving back in time to the first commit, let's try to check. I will clear my screen first. So PWD, now you can already see that I am in the first commit as of now. If I try to ls, you can see that I can only see one particular file, one.txt. I have moved back in time. If I try to check out to the main branch once again, so can you see that previous head position was first commit and switch to the main branch. If I say git log once again, so can you see now, since I switch back again to the main branch, now my head pointer is already moved to the second commit, right? So it is very, very important. So if since I already moved to the second commit or the main branch and head is pointing to the second commit, and if I try to ls now, you can see that I have got both the files listed here. So when I say commit, you can also understand it is a state of the repository. I can move back in time. Okay. So that's it for this video. Moving on to the next. Hello all. So in this section, we are going to discuss about what are the file tracking statuses. When we say the file status is untracked, what do we mean by that? And similarly, we will look at other file statuses as well, right? So just wanted to make sure. So for example, if I have already initialized my current working directory, and if I try to add one particular file, and so that particular file will be untracked because that is no longer tracked, that is not currently tracked by the Git as of now. So I think the better way is to really look at the examples and then we will try to understand how does these file statuses look like. So just give me a second. So this is and just so if I say present working directory, you can see that this is my working directory. So what I'm going to do next here is so let's create one file echo and I will say tracking file status. So this is and I'm going to write in a file tracking or let's just say status. I think would be easier. So if I try to cat the contents of the status file, you can see that this is how it looks like. So now what I'm going to do next is if I say git status, you should be able to see. So that's what we are talking about. So this particular file which I have created, this is the file which with the name being status, right? So this is the file and this is currently untracked. So Git is not currently tracking whatever the changes I will be making to this particular file and the status is untracked. So this is what we are talking about as a first file status. Okay. So moving on to the other status. If I try to add my subsequent command or run my subsequent command, now you already know if I try to run this command, it is going to move all the changes we make in our working directory to the staging area, right? So let's try to do that. Okay, we have done that. Now I will run git status command once again. So now you can see this again. So just let me bring my pointer once again. And now you can see the changes to be committed and the status is nothing but the new, or you can also look it as staged. So this is nothing but the file status is stage, right? So all the changes which I made in the working directory has already been moved to the staging area, right? So just remember this at this point in time. And now I'm going to make one more change. -m and I will say file tracking status. So now you can see again, I will try to check the status once again. So now you should be able to see. So now you should be able to see that I am on the branch main, and at the same time you should also be able to see that working tree is clean. At this point in time, the status of the file is unmodified. Okay, just remember this. And this particular file is being tracked by Git. So what if I go back to my presentation? So now we have seen what is untracked, what is unmodified, what is staged. So we have looked at this particular points, right? So the one more file status which we have not really talked about is unmodified, right? So let's try to understand or decipher the meaning of unmodified. So let me go back to my console once again. Better to clear my screen. What I'm going to do next here is, if I try to do ls, now you can see the status, right? If I again try to content cat the content of this particular file, you should tracking file status. Okay, so what I'm going to do next here is, let us make changes to file tracking status. And I'm going to append output to the our same file, which is nothing but the status. Again, I try to cat the content of this particular file. Now you should be able to see we have added one more line here. If I try to see here git status, let's try to see that at this point in time, you can see that the status is modified. That's what we are really looking at, right? So we have already mentioned that we are going to look at this particular status, which is modified. What does this mean? Now we had already made changes to the file which is being tracked by the Git, and this particular file is modified as of now. And I can again try to add this particular changes to the staging area and commit those particular changes into my Git repository. But just I hope you understand the meaning of modified status of the file, right? Because we have made changes to the file which is being tracked by the Git. Let's try to do that. Git add. Okay, let's try to check the status once again. So again, you should be able to see the status is modified as of now. And if I try to commit this particular changes once again, okay, so this is being done again. If I try to retrieve the status, so at this point in time, you can again see on our branch main and nothing to commit, working tree clean. So that does mean the file has again become or again accomplished the status of unmodified, right? So I hope I will be able to explain the different file tracking statuses. I will see you in the subsequent video. Thank you. Hello all. In this section, we are going to look at branches and merging. So as you can see, we are going to see branches and merging in action, and we are also going to explore commits tree using graph option. Okay. Moving on to my next slide. So here I just wanted to mention or point out some of the things which are important before we really do the practical demonstration. As you can see, this is my main branch, right? And this is my first commit. This is my second commit. This is my third commit. And this is my fourth commit in the main branch. And you can also see that I'm trying to merge feature one branch and feature two branch into the main branch. So at this point in time, just remember that main branch will be or is my receiving branch. Okay. This is what I really wanted to point out at this point in time. If I move on, so this is how the process looks like for merging. So I'm going to create a new branch which is a feature branch from the main branch, and I will be making those changes. That means I will be adding file to the feature one branch and committing those particular files in the same feature branch. And then I will check out into the main branch, and after that I will merge a feature branch into my main branch. So main branch is nothing but which is my receiving branch. So you need to remember this. Okay. So this is the plan of action looks like. So without a further ado, I will be just follow along what is the plan of action looks like. So what I'm going to do next here is, now I am in my terminal. So first of all, if I say git status, now you can see I'm on branch main. At the same time, if I do git log, you can see that I have only one branch at this point in time, which is a main branch. Okay. So let's try to do that. Let me clear my screen. So I will create a new branch. I will say branch name is feature one. Okay. So this is my feature one branch. If I say now I will be checking out into my feature one branch. So now you can see as my terminal indicates that I am in the feature one branch, but for somehow if your terminal doesn't indicate that particular thing, it so now you can see that I am on branch feature one. So what I'm going to do next is I will say echo third file and I am appending into the 3.txt. Okay. So if I try to cat the contents of 3.txt file, you can see that this is the content of this particular file. What I'm going to do next here is I'm going to add this particular file into the staging area, and at the same time, I'm going to commit this particular file into the feature branch. Third file into feature one branch. So this is just for our reference that is done. If I say git status, you should be able to see that my feature one branch is clean, nothing to come in and nothing to commit and working tree clean. If I say git log here, should be able to see that my head is basically pointing towards the feature one branch, and you can also see my commit here. So the first thing is the head is pointing to the feature one branch, and this is the SHA corresponding to the object which we have added. And you can also see that this is the file which we have committed to the feature one branch. Okay, at this point in time. So the commit which we did is corresponding to the feature one branch. So now what I'm going to do next is if I clear my screen, so let's check out to the main branch. Okay. Now I'm going to do one more thing. So let's try to create one more file. I will say echo fourth and I will say 4.txt. Let's try to add that. Okay. And I will be committing this particular file. I will say commit minus M. I will say fourth file into main branch. So that's it. If I try to see the logs once again, should be able to see that now my head is pointing towards the main branch. Okay. So one more thing to point out here is just remember that head is pointing to the main branch at this point in time, and I am able to see the commit which I did corresponding to the fourth file here in my log messages, but I am not able to see the third file which I added in the feature one branch, right? So this I'm not able to see in my main branch as of now because we have not really merged the changes to the feature branch. So if I clear my screen and if I git check out to feature one branch, so here I am. If I try to see git log as of now, now you should be able to see that now my head is pointing towards the feature one branch, and now you are able to see I have added a third file and I am able to see that particular file into my feature one branch, right? So when I try to merge this particular change, so when I try to merge feature one branch into my main branch, I should be able to see all the files. I will be able to see 3.txt as well and 4.txt as well, right? So if so at this point in time, if I clear my screen, if I do ls now, you should be able to see that I have got 1.txt, 2.txt and 3.txt files. And if I go to switch my main branch, you should be able to see that I will not be able to see 3.txt file. Okay. So if I say ls, you can see that the 3.txt file is not yet committed to the main branch as of now because we have not really merged feature one branch into the main branch. So let's try to do that. I will say git, since I am in the main branch and main branch is the receiving branch, let's say git merge, I will say feature one. Okay, so now you can see that I have already opened my nano editor. So what I'm going to do next here, merge branch feature one, and I will say into the main branch. Let's try to exit from here. I will say yes, that's taken care of. So now if I say git log once again, now you should be able to see that this is a complete history. Where is my pointer? So this is the commit which we did corresponding when we try to add the fourth file, right, into the main branch. And you should now you are able to see one more commit here when we try to merge our feature branch into the main branch, feature one into our main branch. So this is the commit responsible for that. And now if I try to list all the files, you should be able to see. Let me go back. If I clear my screen, if I try to do ls, now you are able to see that. So this 4.txt file is coming from the commit because I committed this particular file in the main branch itself, right? In the main branch. And this particular file 3.txt is coming from when I try to merge my feature one branch into main branch. That's the difference. Okay. So I will also try to explore the relationship between the parent commit and the child commit using the graph option in the subsequent video. So I will see you there. Hello all. So in this particular section of the video, let me bring back my pointer. We are going to explore the graph option. And we are also trying to decipher the relationship between parent commit and the child commit. So this is the thing which we are going to explore in this video. So if I go back to my previous slides, so this is the slide, right? So now what we are trying to determine is here is, so you can see for this particular commit, the parent commit is this one, okay? And similarly for this particular commit, the parent commit is again this one, okay? So now we are trying to establish the same kind of the relation in our existing scenario. Okay. So let me remove my pointer and I will be moving to my console. Exit this, I will clear my screen. I will say git log. So, so in order to understand a better, we are only talking about this commit. Okay. So this is the commit in question. Okay. So we are trying to decipher, we are trying to identify what is the relationship of this particular commit with the other commits. Okay. So this is the one thing which I really wanted to mention explicitly. So for this commit, uh, towards which head is pointing towards, okay, what are the parent commits? The first commit is, so the parent one is this one, okay. So this is the parent commit for our commit in question, okay. So where we have added our fourth file into the main branch. The second parent for our commit in question is this one. So this particular commit, we have added a third file which is coming from feature one branch. Just remember, for our commit in question, we have got two parents, P1 and P2. But if we are trying to look at our command line console, you are able to see that it is not very, very clear, right? We are not really able to forge a clear understanding about that. So what are the other options we can explore? And therefore, the graph option is coming in picture. So let me, will say log, I will say. So now, since we are using the graph option, so again, we are talking about this particular commit where the head is pointing towards. Okay, so this particular commit, we are trying to establish or we are trying to determine which are the parents commit for our commit in question. So you can see that this is the first commit, which is the parent commit, and this is the second commit, which is the parent commit, right? So these two commits are the parent commit for our commit in question. Okay, so this is, let's say this is P1 and let's say this is P2. Okay, so this become very, very clear to understand when we are using the graph option. What are the parent commits for our commit? This is what I really wanted to demonstrate. Let me clear my screen. So since we already know this, the second thing I really wanted to do is, now we already know this commit is coming from feature one branch, right? So this particular commit can easily be kept, but let's delete this particular feature one branch because we have already merged our feature one branch into our main. Okay, so let's do that. Clear my screen. Git, I will say branch, I will say minus D, I will say feature one. That's it. If I say git log minus minus graph, so what I'm saying is, when even if we deleted our feature one branch, commits are being kept. Okay, so this particular commit is coming from feature one branch, which we have merged into our main branch. And this is again, so this particular file we have committed in the main branch. It's so all the two commits are being kept. but we have already deleted this particular feature one branch. So this is what we really wanted to explore in this video. So now in the subsequent video, I will show you how we can push whatever the files we have committed to our Git repository, the repository which might be residing at the GitHub level, and how we can really pull the repositories from the GitHub. Okay, so those kind of the things which we are going to explore in the subsequent video. See you then. Hello all. So in this particular section, we are trying to understand the difference between GitHub and the local repository. And at the same time, I'm going to create a remote repository at the GitHub level, and I will be pushing changes from my local repository to the remote repository, which is nothing but the GitHub. Okay. So let me move on. So before I move to my terminal, just understand the structure of the repository which exists at the GitHub level or which exists in my system locally, that remains same. Okay. We already know that in my case, I have the working directory name, which is nothing but the Git repo. So whatever the changes I have committed to this particular local repository, I should be able to push this particular repository to the GitHub also. So we are trying to explore that, how to do that. Okay. So if I move on, so this is the last example. So my name is Chirag. I have working directory, or I would say Git object database, Git repo, where all the changes I've been making under this particular repository are stored, right? So my Git is basically tracking my this repository, whatever the changes I have been making to this particular repository. But this is being tracked in my local system as of now, right? If I really wanted to push this particular repository at the GitHub level, I can do that. So this is my repository at my local system. Okay. If I really wanted to push to the GitHub repository, I can do that. And we are going to look at that particular thing. Similarly, if I have my colleague named Simran, and if she is also working at the repository Git repo in her local system, she should also be able to push changes to the GitHub repository, right? So several of our colleagues should be able to work or should be able to push changes to the same repository provided we have given the permissions. Okay. So without a further ado, let me move to my terminal. Okay. So this is my terminal, and the second thing I really wanted to show you here. So I have already logged into my GitHub repository. If I click here, you can see that this is my username, cybersec nerdy. I've created my GitHub account, a new GitHub account to show you this particular demonstration. What I'm going to do next here is you can see that create repository. So let me create a new repository. I will be giving the name of the repository exactly same as that of whatever the name is existing of the repository Git repo at the local level. Okay, so just remember that. That's it. So this repository can very well be public. That's not a problem. So create repository. I'm not doing any other changes. I'm just creating a repository with the same name as that of. So if I go down, if I scroll down, you can see that there are certain commands which are there for me to make a use of. Okay. So now what I'm going to do that here is, so you remember that the branch which we are working is nothing but the main branch. So we need not make any kind of the changes. Or if you have not done any kind of the changes, you can very well make a use of this particular command. So now I'm going to set an origin. So what I'm going to do is I will be copying this particular line from here. So I'm going to add a, just a second. Okay, so something is wrong here. Just a second. So yeah, so let me copy this particular line once again. If I paste it here, so now okay, you can see that we have got a message that remote origin already exists, right? So what I'm going to do here is remote. If I say -v, you can see that our origin already exists at this particular repository level. So again, let me demonstrate a bit before going forward. So if we really want to download any changes from my Git Git repository which exists at the GitHub level, I should be making the use of this origin. If I really wanted to push my local repository to the GitHub level, I should be making the use of the second origin. So without a further ado, okay. What I'm going to do next here is if I move back here, so this we have already done it, right? So we are already at our main branch, but if you are using a master branch, I would recommend that you make a use of this particular option or this particular command. I will be setting my origin. Okay, so let me try to set my origin. So if I try to run this particular command, so you can see that it is asking for the username. Okay, so now it will be asking my password as well. So if I move back to my repository, what I'm going to do is if I go to the settings, I need to generate a token. So if I go here at the developer settings, let me generate a token, personal access token. I will be using a classic token. Generate a new token. Okay, so let's say git a repo. I will be giving the name as same as that of my repository, and I will be granting all the privileges for the time being, and anyways I will be revoking this particular token because I'm just using it for demonstration. A lot of permissions here. Generate token. So this is the token which I have generated. I will copy this, and if I give it here, so now uh, you can see the message here what I have got. You can see that all the objects has already been pushed to the remote repository, right? So let's try to check in our remote repository whether that particular changes are reflected or not. So let me move back to my home page. And if I go back to my, okay, so this is my repository. Okay, so if I go to my repository, you can see that whatever the changes we have made so far are getting reflected at my GitHub repository. Changes, second commit, third file. So if I try to look at let's say 4.txt, if I click here, should be able to see the other things as well. Okay, so I'm trying to look at the okay, so you can see that this is the commit. So if I go to my local repository, so if I say git log, so if you are able to see this, so I am basically pointing towards this one, right? So you can see that my commit is SHA hash for my commit is starting from this 70AD. And similarly, you are able to see this particular commit and you should be able to see this particular message, fourth file into the main branch. So if I move back to my this repository, so you can see that this is the text of the file fourth and the corresponding SHA hash which is associated with my file is 70 something, right? So this hash remains the same. Okay. That's what I really wanted to demonstrate in this particular video. In the subsequent video, I will be trying to pull the changes from my Git repository to the local system. Hello all. In this particular section, as you are already aware that we have completed most of the things, we have successfully demonstrated pushing from my local repository to the GitHub repository. Now I am at the last section of my video where I am going to demonstrate the pull. Whatever the changes I made at the GitHub repository level, that particular changes should be reflected back to my local system. So let's concentrate on our pull, okay? So if I go back to my GitHub repository, if I click here 4.txt, so you should be able to see that this is the contents of my file. If I click this particular pencil icon here, which you can see, I'm going to edit this particular file directly on the GitHub. I will say this change is directly performed at GitHub level. Okay. And I'm going to commit this particular changes. So in the message, let's say in the message, let's say change done at GitHub directly. This is our message. If I click on commit changes, now if I go here, now if I go here, now you should be able to see that we have done certain changes with respect to this particular file, and you should be able to see respective SHA hash corresponding to that. Okay. So now if I move back to my now if I move back So let me clear my screen first. So now if I really wanted to look at git log, you should be able to see that my commit, the last commit message is here. Merge branch feature one into the main branch. So the change which I have done at the GitHub level is not being reflected into my local repository. Okay. So what I'm going to do next here is, and I can also list that particular file. And if I try to cat the content of my file, you should be able to see it has only got fourth in the content of the file, right? If I clear my screen, if I say git pull, so now you can see that we have successfully pulled whatever the changes that is being or that has already been done at the GitHub level, that will be getting pulled. Okay. So what I'm going to do next here is, so if I try to do ls once again, if I try to cat the contents of my file, so now you can see this change is directly performed at the GitHub level. Okay. So that's what I really wanted to demonstrate. And I would like to congratulate yourself if you have made this far to this particular course. And we have successfully concluded this particular course. And if you liked it, I would request that please like, share, subscribe, and share. Thank you. See you in the next.